Welcome back. This is day 11, I think. In this video, I analyzed my rapid game from last night, and when I started making it, I had intended to finish that quickly and then play a live rapid game afterward. But as often happens with me, my analysis of this game took too long. I had multiple blunders and mistakes and inaccuracies, and each one of those required a minute or two of looking at them, and so by the end, I just didn't have time to play a rapid game. But I am looking forward to playing another live rapid game on chess.com very soon. But for now, just enjoy this analysis. Hopefully you'll get something out of it, or one of those moves that I say, I don't know what that does, you can explain it to me. Let's take a look. Oh, this is my Lichess rapid game from last night. According to the graph, which you can see down here, well, this looks a lot like this is a very common pattern for me. Either staying even or gaining a slight advantage in the opening, blundering in the middle game, and then if I win, it's because going into the end game. I'm not going to go through every move. I'm going to go to the point at which I lost my advantage here right at the middle game. It probably wasn't a very big advantage once we let the engine run. It wasn't quite +1. Okay. I played b4 here. I think it's because I was afraid of their c-pawn pushing forward. But it says I should have played e4, and they would have played knight to c5. Why wouldn't they have played c5? I guess I could have just brought this knight back. Is that the answer? What if I had played e4 and they had played c5's not there? What if they had played c5? I could have come back to c2, I could have come back to e2, I could have gone to f3 and it would have been fine. But e4 is what I needed to play backing up. e4 or b3 just to protect this pawn. And then I guess if they had played c5, I just could have dropped the knight back to any of those squares. Okay, or queen to c2, I guess to get it off this semi-open file and pointing over there for no reason. a4, queen to e2. Okay, but b4 lost all of the little bit of advantage that I had built up at that point, and then my opponent should have played knight to b6 coming after this undefended pawn. They did come after the undefended pawn, they just did it in a slightly different way. They went there because that pawn's undefended, and I can't I can defend it by going to b3. But I defended it by going to e2, and that was not good. b3 was the only good one. Okay, what's the problem with me going to here, which gives my opponent their first very minuscule advantage of the game? The problem is that they can play bishop to g4. If they had played that, couldn't I have just pushed this pawn or put the... No, I wouldn't have wanted to put the bishop there because of their knight, but I could have just pushed the pawn, right? It says I would have played f3 and then they would have brought their bishop back. Okay, then that's probably why they didn't play it here, is it? But here they did play c5, which brought us back to even, and of course I should take it, but I didn't. Okay, now here I should have been worried about bishop to g4, but instead I threw this pawn forward. I needed to keep the pawn back here in order to play f3 if they played bishop to g4. Okay, so this is my first of 3 blunders of the game. I should have just taken this pawn, but instead I went after the knight, and their best move is actually to take here. I was wrong. Their best move is not to take the pawn. Their best move is to take the knight. It's not b4, it's d4. C captures d. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying. I thought I clicked the next button and it jumped to the end, so that confused me and I don't remember exactly where I was. All right, so when they played here, I was supposed to just take this pawn. They're threatening my knight. See, I thought I was doing in equal danger here by threatening their knight, but that turns out to not be the case because they can just take mine, and then of course I'll take theirs, and then they'll take my other knight and I'll take their other knight. But I don't know why that leaves me with such a disadvantage. Oh, is it because it gives them a passed pawn? Maybe that's why. They did play their best move, which was taking their knight, my knight. And I took their knight, which was my best move. Their best move is to take my other knight, and my best move is to take their other knight. So we're equal on material, except this pawn is now a passed pawn, and they get one of my pawns, which protects that. That is their best move. That's what my opponent played. Okay, so they're up nearly -3 here. My best move is bishop to a3. Again, getting in front of that pawn, I'm probably not going to see that. Or playing a3, which makes a lot more sense to me, or rook to b1 to get out of this path. Okay, now I did see this. I did see that they could move this pawn forward, which blocks my queen from getting over here, and once this pawn is moved forward, it'll be guarding this square while the bishop is aimed at my rook. So that's why I need to move this pawn or this bishop. But I thought I could prevent that by playing queen to c2. That's not one of my top 5 moves, but it worked. I mean, it keeps, that discovery from happening there. But now it's -3.5. They need to play queen to e7 because, not sure why, this pawn is defended. Or bishop to e6, aiming for my undefended pawn here. And it says if they did that, I would take there because they had just undefended that pawn. Or they would play a5. No, a5 is what they did play. That's not one of their top 5 moves. Okay, but it didn't hurt them a lot This was one point in the game that I wondered about whether I should have taken, whether I should have protected, or whether I should have pushed past. I decided on pushing past, and that turns out to be best. It says I could have also just moved the rook over or played bishop to d5, which is here. Okay, I guess that's kind of an outpost square for the bishop since they don't have pawns on those two files. Well, I played b5, and it turned out to be okay, but I'm still down nearly -3. Clearly, my opponent wanted to move their b-pawn or their bishop, and they thought the best way to do that was to get the rook out of the path of this bishop so they could move this pawn or move this bishop, and that would be okay. So they played rook to b8. That was one of their top 4 moves. And again, I need to play bishop to a3. Queen to d3. Wait, queen to d3 allows this. It says they wouldn't play it, but yeah, I would not have played this because, of course, they could then push the pawn. I can't get my rook out of danger. That just looks like it invites them to do that, even though it says that they wouldn't. Or rook to f4. Is it because this pawn's unprotected? Looks like they could attack rook to f4 pretty easily in a number of ways. Or a4, which is what I played, but it was counted as inaccurate, even though it's right there. All the other moves that's listed here, I can find a problem with. And I couldn't find a problem with this one, so I don't know what the problem is, except that they can play bishop to e6, and then I would have to play rook to f4, and then they would put this bishop here, and then I would have to play rook to h4. Well, that just looks like getting my rook trapped. Right? Yeah, I don't want that. Okay. But they didn't play that. They played their second best move, which I had assumed that they wanted to move that pawn, which is why they moved their rook. We already said that. Okay, now that I've got this pawn out of the way, it makes a ton of sense for me to play bishop to a3 to free this rook, to get it out of the line from the other bishop, and it is one of my best moves. Okay. See, I have no problem playing bishop to a3 once the a-pawn is forward. I don't understand when it keeps telling me to put it in front of the a-pawn. My opponent should have played queen to e7. Really? Stockfish wants to line the queen up with that pawn. I mean, with my bishop through that pawn. Well, my opponent, like me, could not find a reason to do that, but they did want to line up on the bishop, so they put their bishop back here, but that was a blunder. That brought the game back to even, actually very slight advantage for me, and it's because I can take this pawn. Was that my best move? Okay. Wait, I didn't do it? That seems so obvious now. Oh, well, it says it's my best move, but I can tell you why I didn't do it. I remember now. I remember being about to do this, and then I thought, whoops, they're going to go right here. And look at that. Just out of curiosity, what if I took here, and bishop to f6 is not one of their best moves, but what if they played it? I would have to sacrifice the rook for it. And it says I would be up +5 if I sacrificed a rook for their bishop. Okay, let's say I sacrificed my rook for the bishop and they put the queen here, and then I would take their queen, and then they would take here, and I'm up +2.5 because this pawn, because I split their rooks, and I get the exchange back, and I've messed up their king. Okay, see, that's the part I didn't see. Okay, that's a pretty complex tactic, and I would have to, number 1, trust that my opponent wouldn't do this. Number 2, trust that if they did do that, I would be willing to sacrifice a rook for it, knowing that after all the other exchanges that I would get this pawn and be forking their rooks and get the exchange back. See, they're up a pawn right now. We would be, after all of that, I did this, they did that, I took it, they took, I took, they took. I took the pawn. It says they would let me choose which rook to take. They would put this bishop up here, and I wouldn't take one of their rooks, but I probably would. Wow. See, I would only be up 2.5 if I didn't take their rook. And they're still up at 1 point of material. So if I took here and they took there, then this pawn's hanging, so I would have to... It says I'd have to play c5, but I probably wouldn't. I'd probably play rook to c1. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't see how that's me being up 1.7. Yeah, it says my best move is to give away that pawn. And they're going to take it, of course. And then my best move is a king move, one of these 2 squares. Yeah, this would get right back to even pretty quickly, so I'm actually kind of glad that I did not play, after they moved the bishop, that I did not take this pawn. I wanted to get my rook out of the line of that before I took that pawn, but I should have brought it all the way to the semi-open file. Instead, I just put it here. That's a mistake, and that's because they can come back and defend the pawn. And then it says I would just move over to where I should have gone in the first place. Okay, I think I understand that. But they didn't go there. They got this bishop out here to challenge my bishop. Now it is my best move to take that pawn. Okay, so now we're even. Looks like I gave my opponent a very slight advantage here in just a second before they gave it all the way to me. So they traded off the bishops and we maneuvered a little bit. That was an inaccuracy where my opponent has a very slight advantage. I'm not sure why, because we are even on material and I'm up over a minute on time here so far. That was their best move. That was my best move. Slight inaccuracy on their part, but it doesn't matter because we're still even. That was my best move. One of their better moves. I actually should have just blocked with the rook, but instead I moved my king, which is okay. They took my queen. I took their queen. We are very close to even, and I thought we were. During the game, I remember thinking, yes, I might get this pawn. I mean, they can defend it, but I didn't see how I could win this, and the engine doesn't either. They played that. My best move again is c5. Okay, I didn't see that, but I wanted to put a rook behind it first. That turns out to not matter that much. They went after it here. Rook to c6 is my best move. Oh, good. That was another one that I wondered about, because here I had no idea what to do. How long did I think on that one? Yeah, I spent 18 seconds on that. That's a long time for me in a 10-minute game. I mean, obviously it looked like they were coming after my c-pawn, but I didn't know where else to put this rook. You know, I thought if I check them, they're just going to get out, and then I come back, then what? Okay, this keeps me pointed at this pawn, which keeps their rook trapped here defending it. No, it doesn't. Stockfish says they should get that rook away from it, and then I wouldn't take it for some reason. My opponent didn't understand that either. Like most of those moves, neither my opponent nor I understood them. They played this instead, which still leaves us very close to even. Rook to f1 is one of my better moves. Okay, where did they go behind? This was an inaccuracy, and I should have taken advantage of it by playing king to g2. I thought if I did that, they would just check me. Or h4. Well, I thought if I did that, they could come here and aim at that pawn. Or rook to f3 to keep them from aiming at that pawn. But then they could check me on the back rank. See, I came up with a downside to all of those moves because I'm pretty sure I considered most of them. I went here thinking, let me have control of this file here. Yeah, the engine thinks I could have taken some sort of advantage by moving up here. I don't know what. I guess if they played there, I could have come up and gotten in front of their pawn? Maybe. But I gave away what little advantage that they gave me. But then they made a mistake. That's a huge mistake and gives me 1.6, but only if I play rook to d7. I don't remember considering rook to d7. I'm also not sure what the advantage is. It says that they would put their king here if I did that. I don't know that they would, because that would pin that pawn. Remember, my opponent is probably near my level in chess, so they probably wouldn't play, the best stockfish move there, but likewise, I didn't either. King to f1. Okay, now see, I do understand king to f1. That doesn't give me much of the advantage, but it keeps their rook from coming down here when I get ready to move mine. And it gets in front of that pawn. Okay, so I do understand that. But I went here thinking if they traded, I'd have a passed pawn. They're definitely not supposed to take it. My opponent didn't know that, and they took it. Well, that was my plan. My quest all along was to do that, the reason I put my rook there. So now I have a passed pawn. And I'm at plus 2.3. My opponent played their best move, which is to come toward it. The only move that keeps my advantage is h4. I would keep a little bit of an advantage by playing king to g2, king to f2, even king to f1, or rook to e6 would, rook to e6? Okay, I do understand that one, because the pawn would be protecting it there, and then the king would be trapped in this little tiny box. Okay, that one I do understand. Not sure about all the others, but I pushed it forward. That allows them to either get beside it or go down here. Those are the only two moves. I actually thought that they might come here, and then what was I going to do? I don't remember what I was going to do. How long did I spend on that move? 6, 4, only 2 seconds? Okay. I do understand that blunder, because if they come here, then I can't move it again, right? Because then they could just take it. And then I can't move my rook at all, because then they can take it. And apparently going down here accomplishes the same purpose. That's what my opponent played. My best move is rook to c7, which I did. And see, here I thought I was winning. Here I thought I was not only threatening this pawn over here, but I'm about to get this pawn advanced. But Stockfish says I'm fine if they will play rook to d8 now. And interestingly enough, it says I would then put my rook back here, and then they would go back over there. Okay, so we might end up with a repetition of some kind. But instead, my opponent thought my rook move was coming after this pawn, so they went there. Oh, I thought that's when I was supposed to play this pawn forward, but no. Now I'm supposed to play king to f2 again. Well, I brought that pawn forward because I thought they can't stop it now. They can't come back, right? They need to put their rook in front of it. But instead, they came with their king. I'm surprised that I would still have an advantage by giving away that pawn. It says if I promoted here, their king would just take it, and I would still have a huge advantage. Oh, is that because I would get g7? Okay, well, I just went here, and that turned out to be my best move, but I don't understand how any of those others would give me the advantage. I thought this was the only move that would give me the advantage, because if they took the pawn, I could take the rook, and if they took my rook, I would take it with promotion. Yeah, how in the world would I have such a big advantage if I just promoted to a rook or bishop or queen or knight? Those are my next 4 best moves, and they would just take it. And not if I promoted to a knight. It says if I promoted to a knight, they wouldn't take it. They would come up here, and I would check them, and then they would keep coming, and I guess they would eventually win my knight. I don't know why they wouldn't take it. if I promoted to a knight. But anyway, and I also don't know how I would be ahead in any of those situations where I would just give away the pawn. But I did know how I would be ahead here. They did play their best move, which was taking the pawn, and I took. And of course, here I knew I was ahead. Back earlier when I finally created the passed pawn, I just thought I was ahead. But I do see how that one, not that one. I didn't see how that was a mistake. This one. I do see how that's a blunder, and it's even now. I didn't see it at the time, but I see it now. But the problem is that once I played here, my opponent didn't see that they only had one move, was putting the rook in front. Okay. Well, I'm glad I won, and I think I understand most, if not all, of my blunders and or mistakes. But as you saw, in many cases, I didn't understand the suggested, the optimal moves, and that's okay. If I had another hour, I might sit here and play out each of those variations, which is what many of you have recommended to me. I do appreciate that. All the advice. It's just that I know if I start one of those, I'm not going to get very far before I realize I'm out of time. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.